how can a statement exist without a mind? It cannot.
Because the logical absolutes are essential and not conceptual.
Okay, what you're doing is saying that the nature of logic itself is concomitant with the existence of physical properties.
No, because
Yes.
no, because they apply even if there is nothing. Nothing.
The application is of the mind.
I agree. The application of this is of the mind. The
Why do
application of these.
why do you keep using conceptual applications to verify a non-conceptual situation?
Because you have to talk about it.
Exactly. You cannot do it without
But
mind.
that
Truth
goes.
doesn't exist without a mind. The logical absolutes, by necessity, require a mind.
This is the contradiction in your thing. You're saying that X is conceptual, therefore the thing that X is based upon is conceptual.
No,
that's
that's
a
not what
fallacy. That's
No,
a
no, no,
fallacy.
no.
That's like saying my lust is emotional, therefore the object of my lust is also emotional. It's a category fallacy.
No, that's called a fallacy of division. Look, the nature of the logical absolutes. Logic is a process of proper inference. The proper inference occurs in the mind. Logic is a process of the mind.
Agreed.
The logical basis of logic itself is on basic conceptual laws. They are statements that we codify. All you do is when you say, hey, look, we are the ones codifying what already exists, you're not saying anything other than they are either the property of the universe, which can't be, or we are inventing them by codifying them. And you're saying then that what they really are dependent upon human minds for their existence.
No. What I'm saying, I agreed with almost everything right up to the end, except that what you've done is you've talked about two different things. You've talked about logic, and that is the process that we go through, the thinking, the model that we build in our mind that reflects reality. That is necessarily conceptual. But these logical absolutes that we talked about, they're not logic, they are the foundations upon which logic is built. They are true. They are. Hang on. They are true, and they are true. And you went to universe, and you went to reality. They are true, irrespective. I can't believe I almost said irregardless. That was a good one. You got me so flustered. You're using me letting me use non-words. They are true, irrespective of the subject. They are essentially true. Reality is reality, and it's not reality. It applies to every reality. It applies to anything you could think of, including things that don't exist. Now, the application of this is conceptual. That I grant. But the concept is pointing to something physical. It's like saying I have a concept of an apple, and it's not the same as the apple, and the apple is not a concept. But there is a physical apple that I'm pointing to. That's not a perfect analogy because we're pointing to something physical. Our logical thought processes, the application of these absolutes, and in some cases, we use other things because, like modal logic deals with possibility inferences towards necessity. But that's our attempt to understand the universe in which we live. And there is a presumption that it operates under certain rules, and that there is consistency throughout this. Those are all things that we do perhaps in the scientific investigation. But
That's called begging the question.
But at the core, these three absolutes of classical logic that were sorted out at the time of Aristotle, they address, for example, in a syllogism, they address the validity of the structure. They are content agnostic. A equals A does not equal not A, and it's not neither or both at the same time. This addresses essence. It is the only sense that this is conceptual is that you have a concept of this. But the this in that sentence is not in itself conceptual. Otherwise, you have the situation where A equals A or A does not equal not A is based on somebody's thought. It becomes contingent upon thought, which is exactly what you want to do. You want to get to the point where you can say that since we're not perfect, it must be contingent on a perfect mind since they're absolutes. Well, guess what? Well, first of all, you can't get there because that's not it. You've changed the scope of what we're talking about. We're talking about the absolutes. But also, when you get to the point where you say that I'm going to label it God, well, congratulations. You've labeled this non-contingent absolute that we both almost, I thought, agreed exists. You've just labeled it God.
Well, you said a lot. There's a lot to comment on here.
Nope.
But let me ask you this.
Okay.
Tell me what the essence, the very nature, the ontos of these logical absolute laws. What are they? By nature.
I don't know, but I do know that they are what they are, and they are not what they are not.
So you don't know what they are.
That's correct.
But you're telling me what they're not.
No. I'm saying that they
Are they
are.
conceptual?
I'm saying that they are what they are, and they are not what they are not.
Yeah, well, that's called begging the question. You're saying it is what it is because it is what it is. That's just citing the law of identity.
Right.
If you don't know what they are, how can you tell me that they're not?
I can tell you what they are not, and here's why.
Tell me what they're not.
Because are is one thing, and are not is everything that isn't that one thing. And so if I had to identify anything in this pool, that doesn't mean that I've eliminated this entire pool.
Can you tell me what the logical absolutes are not?
I'm not talking about them in the physical sense of an essence.
So they're not physical?
I have no idea. Well, all right.
If you're going to tell me
are
that I'm
asserting,
wrong, you need to be able to identify what they are. If you can properly tell me what it's not.
No. I do not. No, I do not need. Okay, then you need to be able to identify what God is before you can tell me that He is.
Okay.
And you got to prove this. You can't just assert it.
No, you said. How do I prove? This is the proof.
I'm saying. We're talking in one context, and I'm afraid there's a limit to how long I can let this go on before we start losing callers and viewers. And maybe we can take it offline, discuss it in email, and get back to it again on another call. But what I'm saying is, you're saying that that these laws are transcendent, not contingent, although you leave one mind as an exclusion to that, and absolute. And I'm saying, and then you go on to say that they're conceptual in nature because we think about them. And I'm saying that argument is logically flawed.
I'm not saying they're conceptual in nature because we think about them.
That's exactly what you said.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we are able to think about them, and because we can recognize them doesn't mean that they are of our minds. It means that we recognize them. It's the same as I recognize them in my backyard. What is it?
So what are you recognizing?
Essence.
So what are you recognizing? Because if you say, I can recognize an apple, hang on, because if you say, I can recognize an apple, and therefore the apple is conceptual, that is exactly what you're saying in this point, and that's the fallacy I'm pointing out.
Okay. You're citing the law of identity. Look, I'm a theologian, and if someone were to come to me and say the Trinity is one God in three modes or forms, I'd say, no, that is not right. The reason it's not right is because it violates what the true definition of it really is. This is what it really is. I'm able to recognize what is wrong because I know what it really and truthfully is.
How do you know? How do you know?
Because I know from the Scriptures what it is. That's a whole other topic. If you want me to come back on and discuss the Trinity, I will. But here's the thing. The principle is this. And if you were to tell me that I'm wrong about deciding what they are, defining what they are, and you can't even tell me what they really are, then you have no logical business of telling me that I'm wrong.
That, sir, is a complete fallacy. I identified a logical fallacy in your argument. My inability to tell you exactly what they are does not mean that I can't identify one of the things they're not. But that is all irrelevant to the point that you have built this on a logical fallacy. You have said that logic, our thought process, is conceptual, and therefore the absolutes upon which it is founded are also conceptual. And that is fundamentally the same as saying, I have a concept of an apple, and therefore the apple is also conceptual. That is flawed. The argument is flawed.
It's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that
I'm sorry that you don't see it that way, but the structure is the same.
Well, I can say the same thing about you, Matt, respectfully. I'm sorry you don't see it that way. But the fact is, you don't have a standard by which you can judge whether these logical absolutes are or are not conceptual. I'm asking you for a list. Tell me what they are not. I will write them down here on my computer as we're talking.
You're asking me to prove that a God doesn't exist, essentially.
No, I'm not.
And I don't. Yes, you are, essentially.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are. Let me finish.
No, I'm not. I'm asking you to tell me.
I'm going to hang up on you in a second, Matt, if you don't let me finish this. I'm making an analogy here. I'm sorry that your brain missed it. You are essentially asking me to prove that a God doesn't exist and claiming that a God does exist in your mind until I actually demonstrate that he doesn't. That's what you're doing the same thing with these logical absolutes, because you're saying, and you just said a second ago, that if I can't tell you what they aren't, I can't tell you what they are.